very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Pleasure, Nick.
But before we go into leadership, can you share your own story a little bit with us? Can you tell us, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in South Africa, and more specifically in, I think my important years were spent on a small holding in Honeydew, which is probably part of the greater Randburg area.
Okay. So you grew up in almost a rural environment.
Yeah, you could call it a farm.
And what was your dream career when you grew up?
I think a theme that will come through in this conversation is that I had no dreams.
No dreams?
No.
Did you have any inspiration? Was there anybody who inspired you in your early days?
Yes, Tintin.
Clinton?
Tintin.
Tintin?
Yeah.
Very good.
I used to get lost in the imagination of those books in the Incas and, just the whole vibe of London and just all of Tintin's stories. It just filled my imagination. And I think his character was actually also important for me, that he was honest, he was inquisitive, and I loved Captain Haddock because he had soul, and Cuthbert Calculus was this like idiosyncratic, nutty professor. And I mean, it may sound trivial to you, but Tintin was like a part of my soul.
So would you say it's the core, you are an explorer?
I am an explorer. And, exploring can take on many forms. It can take on forms of climbing mountains, going to new countries, but it can also take forms of understanding stuff differently, researching topics, exploring ideas, So exploring can take many different forms.
So, Stephen, where did you start your career?
So, I went to Emmarentia Primary School, Greenside High School. I finished my last year at Eden College, and because I idealized my older uncle, in fact cousin, he's 10 years older than me, he was a doctor. And he took me to talks about, Philip Tobias and evolution, and it's a problem when you idealize people, because then without thinking about it, I wanted to do medicine. And I never had the grades to get into medicine. So my family didn't have money, and I thought, look, I've got to earn money, so I better become a chartered accountant because you could do your articles. And I started studying accountancy. I did it part-time for the first 3 years. And then I finished the last 2 years full-time, which was a joke for me because part-time, you had to work during the day, get to lectures at 5 o'clock at night and do your tutorials at night. And so when I went full-time, I was playing squash every day, playing chess, talking, and I kind of loved the academics of the thing. And I became a chartered accountant. I wrote the board in 1987. And then also had no dreams, aspirations, but some of the clients that I used to audit at really liked me. So I ended up joining one of them for 2 years, and he then emigrated. And then, once again, I'm the kind of guy, and I'm not proud to say this, things happen to me rather than me plan things. And because I'm a likable person, my brother-in-law, because we married two sisters. He's a serial entrepreneur, deal maker. He spotted that I'm a good dude, and he said, "Stephen, come join me. Let's get into the software company." And that's how my career started. And 30 years later, we're having this conversation. I left that company 18 months ago, but we started the company. It was called Softline, and it wrote kind of bookkeeping, accounting software that small businesses use to run their businesses. We listed it on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in 1997. Those good .com boom years followed. And then in 2003, we wanted to delist the company off the stock exchange, and a hostile bid was brought against us, and we then flew to the United Kingdom to see probably one of the largest players in the accounting software market called Sage, and they acquired us in 2003. And because it was a good deal for them and they had operations internationally, they kind of left us alone, let us continue our entrepreneurial vibe of running the business. So I worked for them for, call it 14, 15 years, and I left last year.
And if you look back over your career, was there a major turning point?
Look, the major turning point for me personally, I believe, was meeting my brother-in-law, Ivan Epstein. Because I don't particularly love business, but I love interacting with customers, with people. And so I would say that I'm not the most proactive person in the world. And Ivan was always the part of the business that like was pushing the boundaries. Let's do another deal. But he always knew that he had me behind him, vibing with people, making sure we understood the businesses properly and running the business as well. So together we were really a great yin and yang combination. So if you ask me what the biggest thing was, I think it was meeting Ivan. Then also my other mentors that I've had, Brian Zook in particular, where we would talk about life, relationships, and the other side to business, which we call it the other side, but in fact maybe it's the most important side, just the social element of doing business.
And Stephen, what is driving you today?
Well, you talked to me at a very confusing point in my life because I was quite a well-known personality in my time of the listed days and giving lectures around the country. And now I'm kind of in a stuck place because, you know, when you leave and you leave as the king, you're aware of why you're the king because you happen to be the MD and everyone looks up to you. And then you're kind of on your own and people are expecting things from you. What are you doing now? And, you know, I'm telling people I'm not sure if I want to do anything. And then I go to bed at night and feel guilty that I'm doing nothing. So I'm really just, I've got investments in two businesses which I'm reasonably active in, and they're not in the financial software game. I'm reasonably financially secure. So I do have the luxury of having time to think. And a lot of people may say, well, that may be your undoing, that you're spending too much time thinking. But I've got to feel more settled in the world before I decide what I want to do. I'm certainly not an entrepreneur in the normal sense of the world, of the word. I'm not a serial deal maker. I like getting involved in organizations where I can make an incremental, slow difference over time and change the culture of the organization, which is much more than, you know, having meetings and doing deals and private equity stuff. That's not my game. And it's been difficult for me to actually take that criticism of myself. But I think I'm very valuable in a holistic sense. And if there's a business that I really feel I can make a difference to, then I'll get involved. As a simple investor, that's not really where I'm at.
Now, Stephen, let's talk about leadership. What does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, you know, it's quite interesting because apparently, and seriously, some of the stuff may come across arrogantly, but apparently I was an inspirational leader. And I made a talk for the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants just before Zuma was coming into power. So Mbeki was still there, and I said, guys, leadership's not that important. Execution is everything. Because at the time, we didn't have the corruption that we have now. And municipalities weren't being well run, and the country I felt wasn't being well run. And so then I was very tuned into execution more than leadership, and good ethics and you know, commitment. Well, those were the things that were important to me. And what we have been shown so clearly over the last 10 years is in fact how important leadership is, primarily as an example to others in how to live your life and how to inspire people. And you can see the difference in a Mandela versus, let's say, a Zuma. The one had a massive presence, whose ethics were intact, who was just massively respected. and the other who had the opportunity to do that, but in fact wasn't that type of person. And you can see where it's put us, where we were all complaining about Mbeki at the time. Kind of like leadership wasn't that important because we were irritated with his approach to AIDS and his whole statesmanship quality. But you can see how things can go wrong when leadership is bad. So it's quite interesting that at the age of 56, I've only really learned to deeply appreciate leadership because of what's happened to this country over the last 10 years.
And Stephen, what do you consider most important, or what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
That whole debate, are leaders born or are they taught? I still can't answer that question. One thing I do know is that some people enter a room and they have a presence about them. You can go and talk to Darwin about stuff like that. And that, I think, was in their DNA. And obviously the way their parents were was critically important, and their friends. But even you can see it in school in grade 10, just some people stand out. And not because they're cleverer or anything, they just have that certain aura about them. And to me, those people are born leaders. Now, once you do that, you then got to grow the tree. You got to water it properly. You got to prune the leaves. You've got to do all the stuff to make you more content better, for want of a better expression. So I think if you have that presence about you and that gift, wherever it came from, you can then hone it. You can educate yourself, and then it becomes exponential how you can leverage your gift to actually just be a much better thought out leader than you were in, let's call it, your natural state.
Now, Stephen, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them they should focus on for future-proofing their career?
They need to be self-aware. I think that for me has been extremely important. Now remember, unfortunately, in today's world, which I'm pretty unsatisfied with or worried about, leadership so often just gets equated with how much money you have. So when you talk about stuff like emotional intelligence or self-awareness, people often roll their eyes. But I believe that is so important to understand what triggers you. Because if you want to be a great leader, there's so many leaders of organizations who lead by fear. I mean, there's that one great movie. I can't remember who was in it. But the mafia boss says to someone, do you want to be loved or do you want to be feared? And his advice to his understudy would rather be feared than loved. In my naivety, I would much rather be loved than feared. But then the responsibility comes out in that you must hire the right people around you who kind of mold into that way of running a business. If you want to hire and grow your business through insecure overachievers, which are often brilliant people to have in a business because they'll work themselves to death, and they're probably competent, but they've got to prove themselves all the time, it can be very good for your organization. And I hired a lot of people like that, but we spoke about it all the time. We spoke about the fact that they were great because they were insecure overachievers. We didn't hide it. I never ran the business in a contrived way or kept secrets to work on people's weaknesses. We always discussed it around the table, laughed about it, and we just try to grow each other. I'll say something about running my business, even though that there were about 600 people working for me in the one subsidiary that I ran. I never felt any better than the person running stores or the chartered accountant working for me. I always felt that we were all human beings struggling to keep alive in this very difficult world, which I believe it is, to kind of go after the biggest aspiration, which is simply to be happy. And happiness means so many things to different people, but surely that is just the ultimate aim. I mean, it worries me that, I'm reading books which talk about how much better the world is now because mortality rates are down, healthcare is more available, food's more available. But they don't talk about, does all that make people happy? And I'm thinking, maybe we would all have been more happy living in rural areas, growing our own food, being more intact with our social engagements with people in the village. I mean, it may sound mad to you, but like those questions really trouble me. I mean, is communism the best way? But as human beings, we're just not perfect enough for communism. We're too greedy. We need to be driven. What does that say about human beings? Is capitalism just the best of all evils? And it's because of the way we built it, we need capitalism. So all these things are going around in my head, and I'm making it quite difficult for me to feel satisfied in the world. And I've come to realize that the only reason that we can be on this planet, the only reason, is the difference we make to others. There's no logical other reason for being in the world. And often I get involved in selfish pursuits like reading books and philosophy and history, but unless I share that with someone, I'm just entertaining myself for no other value, because if I die tomorrow, it all disappears with me. It's only what you leave behind that makes a difference.
So, Stephen, what does happiness mean to you?
Okay, for me, happiness means contentment. And it's quite interesting because I'm a friend with a big hedge fund manager. And he said to me, so Stephen, what would make you happy? I said, if I was content. And he looked at me with disgust. Content, it means you're not moving forward. And I said, I disagree with him. Contentment for me could mean studying my guitar and understanding chord structure and chord theory and how melodies stick together and counterpoints. I'm still wanting to do something. Contentment doesn't mean I want to sit like a slob in a chair and watch TV and I'm content. But the way I see contentment is that you're satisfied with what you're doing. And if I felt that I was okay as a human being, that to me is happiness. And that I'm giving and I'm making a difference to people. That to me is what I'm after.
Now, Stephen, let's quickly talk about technology. We're living in a world that, to a large degree, is driven by technology. So, in your mind, what are the technologies that we have to be aware of when it comes to leadership and the future of leadership?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question for me. I mean, I'm 56. So, if you ask me what three products have made the greatest difference in my life? In fact, there are 4. The one is Excel. The other one's email. Google Earth, Google Maps, unbelievable. And then just generally Wikipedia and Google and getting information. That has made the massive difference. Showing my age again, when it comes to things like Facebook and Instagram, it just irritates me because it just fills your mind up with clutter and absolute noise. And I'm a person who's mainly after just headspace, which allows me to think. You can't have coffee with someone these days in an engaged manner if they're wearing an Apple Watch, which I am, or their iPhones, Android phones, whatever they are. There are always interruptions. And I think we're living in a world which, if there was ever the potential for anxiety, it's been lifted out of the stratosphere at the moment because of all these other apps that have been developed, which I think are not helpful at all to the human experience. If I could rule the world, like those 4 apps that I mentioned, yeah, it's cool to do internet banking, that's cool. Wikipedia for me is absolutely amazing. I do love the fact that I can stream a movie and watch it. But even that, is that a good thing? Maybe it was good going to the cinema, and having your popcorn and a Coke and having the social experience of bumping into people. I think that's cool. So if you ask me what technologies are important, I think we've got to define technologies that make you efficient and technologies that do all this other stuff I'm talking about. Now, technology for efficiency's sake, I'm really into. And maybe I'm biased because I was in the technology space. But if I think about like accounting business software, it's made a massive difference. The way that you could interpret your business, the way that you could forecast stuff, the way you could put in variables to change scenarios, and just simple things, that list of customers, what they owe you. I mean, remember when I did my auditing, I remember people had those big cards that they used to write down invoices and payments. So yes, technology's been much better for all of that stuff. But I just think it's gone to another level now, which is not helpful. Now, if we look at neuroscience and that, I've just been talking to a person who's a bad stutterer. I think technology in that instance would be great if they could find out what part of the brain causes stuttering. That could be very helpful to human beings. The way they're handling prosthetics these days, where your brain can actually make things move. I think stuff like that's very cool. But I just think we've got to be so careful of technology for technology's sake. And for me, some guys are in the tech industry, they've got to keep on moving ahead and doing more stuff. I just don't know whether it's helpful to society. So, yeah, sending a rocket to the moon was fantastic. Stuff like that I love. But I'm just quite disenchanted with all the noise at the moment, which has been caused by the social media, these algorithms. I mean, let's take chess as a great example. Chess for me growing up was just a wondrous thing. It was mind art on a 64 square board. I've often thought the fact that computers can now easily beat grandmasters. I think a grandmaster rating of about 2,800. I think the best computer now is about 3-4. I mean, you can download it, that software. What has that done to the emotional state of chess players? So I've read Gary Kasparov's book where he said artificial intelligence is going to be great because it will be used with human beings. So when that first chess, it wasn't the first chess program, one of the main ones called Fritz, it was great for grandmasters to work with Fritz to kind of like, do scenarios and test out moves. And then it was cool. But now, what has that done to the psychology of people? The fact that computers could beat them easily. It's almost like chess has been played out. Where's the imagination? So, that type of stuff I think we all need to think about. So just going back, I've been going in a roundabout way. Technology for efficiency's sake is cool. Algorithms can be very useful in some ways. I mean, if Discovery are now with their bank using algorithms to work out the proper risk of their life policies, that's cool. I have no issue with that stuff. And then we can sort of get into the dramatics of algorithms will now kind of control your life and you won't be able to get a bond. That stuff, it needs to be properly thought about. And I think people are running at 1,000 miles an hour without thinking about this stuff.
Now, Stephen, you touched on social media. What is it you tell youngsters they should go about navigating social media to build their own personal brands?
Okay, instinctively. And this is where I'm open to criticism. I hate the word social brand. I just don't dig it. Social brands in the past used to be because Nick met Tony outside and told me he's a cool dude and he's trustworthy and you have a conversation. Now we're all crafting our social brands. I mean, if I see one more notification that it's Nick's birthday, that to me is absolute rubbish. It allows me to lie about myself because I'm setting up all these social platforms and they're making me seem like a friendly person. I don't want to live in a world where I craft my social brand over computers. So people, on Facebook, he looks like such a nice person. Humans judge each other through human interaction. So I know a lot of your listeners may be saying, well, Stephen's ready for the arc. He's in his twilight years. He's lost it. But I mean, this stuff gives me a lousy feeling. But I'm practical enough to know that if you are going into business, you need to set up your Facebook page properly. You need to set up your LinkedIn page properly. You've got to do it because that's just how it is today. So yes, is it important? It's very important. Do I like it? Absolutely not.
Now, Stephen, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story where you mentored somebody and that person took your advice to heart?
Okay. There was a support person who worked for us at Pastel Software, and His name was Dingon. And I always saw a spark in Dingon, but he was an alcoholic. And we ended up having to let him go. But I always kept contact with him, and then I'll never forget, he came back to us on a kind of probation period. And we had a year-end function, and he got completely drunk, and he was lying in the flowers. And I picked him up, I put him on the back of my motorbike at 3 o'clock in the morning, no helmet. I took him to my house, I put him in my spare bedroom. When he woke up, I said, here's a toothbrush, brush your teeth. And I started in Mentor. And today, Dingon, someone with 4 kids, which I keep on telling him he's had too many children. And he's one of the good support people at Pastel. Now, that may sound trivial to you, but he says I changed his life. And I think he saw that the CEO was taking this drunk guy on his bike to his house and giving him a toothbrush and saying, have a shower and all that stuff. He started to think about life differently. He tells me that I've changed his life. There was my chartered accountant, Keith Gould, who joined me probably in 1993, who I've mentored through the years just by accident, by conversations, and he left as well at the same time as me. He's got a great job. I matched him up with a like-minded personality, and he's really flourished. So, I've got lots of good little stories. I don't believe in these dramatic stories. Well, I mean, my domestic worker, I make sure that I bought her a laptop, I bought her an iPad, I made sure she had wireless networking in a room. And I remember when I had some electricians who came to do my house, they looked at me distastefully. Why are you giving your domestic worker all this stuff? So I change people's lives in very subtle, ways. And I think it comes across because I really live my life like I'm no better than anyone else. And I believe it. I don't do it in a contrived way. We're all going to die. We're going to be a full stop on a history book one day. In fact, they won't even mention us. So we all take our lives too seriously and too dramatic. Just make little differences to people all the day and be real. I mean, to me, to be real and ethical is just so important.
Well, Stephen, are there any role models of leadership that you would suggest future leaders should study and maybe learn from?
Honestly, I'm just going to give you the cliches. Nelson Mandela. I've always loved Warren Buffett. I loved what Warren Buffett said about Bitcoin. He was being interviewed on CNN, and they said, so are you buying into Bitcoin? And he said, no, I don't understand it. And they said, oh, so obviously you're selling short. And he said, I just told you I don't understand it. I wouldn't go long, short, anything. He's a real dude. He still goes every morning, has his McDonald's hamburger, lives in the same house. Yes, I know he's got a private jet. I must say I'm not a materialistic person at all. Airports irritate me, so if I could buy a private jet, I would. And those are the only 2 people that kind of stand out for me. I mean, I understand Steve Jobs, inspirational, probably was surrounded by insecure overachievers. You just wanted to please him all the time. And look how great he made the company for that. So you need to think about, what do you want your leader to do? Was Steve Jobs a healthy leader? Probably not at all. He probably created hundreds of millionaire emotional basket cases. Now, if the millionaire part appeals to you, well, then Steve Jobs is cool. If the emotional basket case doesn't appeal to you, well, then he's not your dude. It depends what you're after.
Now, Stephen, how can our listeners get hold of you, and how can they connect with you?
The best is just to, I suppose, email me. And my Gmail address is Stephen, Steven, full stop, Cohen, 714 @gmail.com. And the 714 comes from Tintin Flight 714 when they went to that Indonesian island.
What happened there?
He was on a hijacked plane with Rasta populace, and they tried to extort money out of someone, and just Tintin happened to bump into him at the airport, so he was on the plane. And then there was a volcano, and it erupted, and they all got brainwashed and found themselves back in reality.
Now, Stephen, last but not least, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own life?
Become self-aware And don't be scared to pay a lot of money for good people. I would rather overpay someone who's good than underpay someone who's bad, because I'm just too scared to bring the money, to spend the money. Because the one thing I can trace the trajectory of our company, I can actually almost plot it on a graph and say, oh, that's when Debbie was hired. That's when Lalana was hired. That's when Keith was hired. That's when Daryl was hired. Ashley was hired. I can almost plot that out.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom and for sharing your story.
Pleasure.
That's how we all learn. And thank you for mentoring so many youngsters.
Yeah, remember, the mentoring thing's interesting for me, because a lot of people I don't mentor, because I'm saying, you actually don't want to be mentored. You just want me to teach you how to make money. I'm actually not good at making money. I'm good in a holistic sense of growing a company that will eventually make money. But I'm not the dude to come to if you say, Steve, I want to be mentored, because I think a lot of people just think, show me how to make money. To me, that's not my kind of mentoring. It may be other people's. But thank you, Nick.